Hey guys, I'm Lee Jessup. We're here with a Right On podcast to have a casual, easy, lovely discussion with Eric Kripke, showrunner of The Boys, Supernatural, lots of other very cool work.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks
And-
to you guys for showing up.
And for signing scripts before we stepped up here. Somebody's going to see it
course.
and really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
It's going to be unexpected and it's going to be all you.
Yeah.
So I'm very linear in my thinking. I always like to start at the beginning.
Okay.
You started out by coming in for USC.
Yes.
What made you decide film school is your path, and how was that for you?
I grew up in Ohio, and I was one of those freaks where I wanted to be a filmmaker since I was it was E.T. in 83. I was born in 74, so I was 9. So I came home from ET and I was like, that's the thing I want to do. That just the notion that someone made that. So then I had a video camera on my shoulder and I drafted all my friends into these terrible movies and was always writing and whatever. So I wanted to go to USC because it was the only film school whose name made its way back to Toledo, Ohio. It could have just as easily been NYU and my life would have been on a whole other trajectory, but USC was the one that made it. And so I applied as an undergrad, got in, came out, and moved to LA when I was 18 and the year after the LA riots.
Fun time.
And I was like, all right, let's do this. And it was the best. It was so fun.
What were the big takeaways, the things that stayed with you from the film school experience?
I tell people this all the time, which is there's about 6 to 8 books that are pretty still popular and will give you about everything you need to know from a film school education, both writing and production. And it's not really about that. It's about being able to make friends with a young, passionate group of people that were all entering the business at the same time. By far, that was the most valuable thing about film school. The guy who is the composer of every episode of The Boys and half of Supernatural is one of those guys. DP, who shot some scenes from The Boys, is one of those guys. Just to have the support system. And so all the people at film school who were really snooty and competitive, they're not in Los Angeles anymore or in the business. And it's the people, it's such a team sport. And you really learn how much of it, what a small part you actually play in the machine of it, and learning and being really humble and having proper humility for it really is everyone just that whole thing of let's put on a show. It really is that vibe. And that's the best part of it. So I really learned that from film school. I was by the time I got to my senior year, and it was time to make a thesis film. USC, one thing that was a loving complaint about USC is at least at the time, they tried to structure themselves like the studio system. So you would have to go in and you'd have to pitch your movie and you would get denied. And I got denied. They told me it was just too difficult to make because it was a 12-page script. It had 25 locations, a car crash, 2 explosions, a lot of murder, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to make my movie. And then my 2 best friends who were producing it. It just shows you what a different time it was. We walked into the Bank of America across the street and we said, we need $30,000. And they said, for what, for tuition? And we were like, yeah, for tuition. And they're like, you cool with like a 9% interest rate? And we're like, we're great. And they're like, okay, sign it. And we just signed it. And we literally walked out of the bank that same day with a check for $30,000 and made the movie. And
Amazing.
So you just do it, you just do it, whatever it takes, you just do it. My very first job, I paid it off. So that was the very first thing I did. Yeah.
Different world, different time.
Yeah.
What a wild place it was back then.
Yeah.
Just as a thought to listeners of the podcast, people who are thinking about film school today, knowing what you know today and knowing how the world has changed, is film school still something that you really advocate for young writers or young filmmakers who are coming up?
It's a really interesting question. I was just thinking about this the other day. Here's where it's useful for a lot of the same reasons I found it useful. It's a nice, safe, regimented place to like get a foothold into a city and get to know other filmmakers. I mean, I would argue that the curriculum matters even less than it did in my time. Like, because even though it's like hard to break into the business and it's as hard as it's ever been, if not harder, but like the process of making film has been so democratized in a way that I never could have dreamt. Like, we would have to, just to even cut on an Avid, we would have to rent these massive hard drives that we would have to keep in our trunk and lug them into these.
The JBods of those days, yeah.
And now it's just, you have 10 times that processing and VFX power just on your laptop. And so like, it's amazing what people can do now. And so like that part, it's just, it's such a, it's so much more a craft than it is an art. Screenwriting, filmmaking, it comes from practice, and film school is a lot like, we're going to teach you how to make beautiful furniture. And you're like, well, can I get a hammer and make that furniture? And they go, no. But we have all these amazing books and teachers who are going to tell you all the theory of making all of this furniture. And you're just dying to make it. And that's really how you learn. And the ability for people to just shoot and learn how to take a beat and how a scene, it's one thing to write a scene, but then like you have to put it on its feet. And a lot of times, and it's always interesting when watching a young writer, like maybe the first time we're bringing them up to the show or something, and they're seeing like, wow, when I wrote this, I just was not thinking about the geography of how it was all going to work, or like I had a briefcase in this moment, but in the very next moment, I had the guy doing something else with his left hand. But how could he do that? He's holding the briefcase. I'm like, exactly. And that just comes from being there and understanding that there's got to be an actor actually doing it one day.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider and a lot to learn and a lot that you don't know to think about until you're in it and doing it. And you got with the doing very quickly. I know you made short film and really kind of got your sleeves rolled up and got into the action of doing.
Yeah. How
much of that do you find you still lean on today as a showrunner from those early days of making?
I mean, a lot. I mean, there was something really fun about the just whatever it takes, you just like duct tape it together and figure out how to do it. Like a lot of that problem solving still applies. Yeah.
And you've been creating content, creating TV. You had Supernatural. That was such a breakaway hit and such a definitive show. But in some ways, many ways, all the ways, more conventional than something like The Boys that is so beautifully subversive. So how does Supernatural set you up for The Boys, or does it?
The Supernatural was I had a lot of horror influences. By the way, I came out, and had you asked me in film school what I was going to do, I would have said, "Oh, I'm going to write and direct comedies," which shows you how you just
What happened?
chase the path. Well, it turns out I sucked at it. I would write these comedies, and like they would never go anywhere, and they weren't that good, and they were like these bad, like Adam Sandler knockoffs, and then I wrote a horror movie just to blow off steam, because I loved horror, and within like a year of writing it, it got made. And then I always had this idea in my back pocket about Supernatural. It was a different form, but it was something I always wanted to make. And so then I pitched it because I just loved it. I loved urban legends. It was just something I was passionate about. Growing up in the Midwest, that's like part of it. Like farms and lonely roads and that sort of thing, like that whole deal. So I wanted to make a show about urban legends, I mean, in some ways, it's a network show, and you're beholden to network standards. Like there's only so far you can go. I think if I could make, Supernatural on a streaming site today, it would be a very different show than what I was allowed to do then. But it's about family, and, you really learn your way around dialogue, and you have like an ear for it. You start to get an ear for it. And it sort of bums me out that it doesn't really happen anymore, but we had to make 22 of them a year. And not even a year, like 8 months. We make 8 episodes of The Boys in like a year and a half.
But have you noticed all that you do on The Boys in a given episode? I mean, my God.
All I'm saying is we're writing the training of that I just wish more young writers had. In that just the experience of like you write a scene and you're literally shooting it 24 hours later, or sometimes even less, and it takes on, it's just such a trial and error, and you're like, oh my God, what a horrible failure that episode was, but that one succeeded, and here's why. And you don't have time, and you're just racing, and it really trains you to be a really effective showrunner, because it's like 8 episodes. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, that's like no problem, and so it's hard for me to get rattled, because I've been there when it's like, we're shooting in 4 days and we don't have a script. What are we going to do for real? And learning to live with that, that it's like this almost an extreme sports version of writing. And so learning how to handle that made the rest. Again, it's hard for me to be in a situation where I'm like, wow, that's scarier than the other shit that I did. Apropos of nothing, but just because we're talking to writers. And here's a tip that I did that no one ever does. So I want to say it about when I brought up about dialogue. I did it by accident. I was writing a feature when I was really young, just starting out. And I was just interviewing people, about some of their life experiences. It was a romance. It was a romantic comedy, so I was asking people about their love lives, and I was just interviewing people. And I ended up, and then I decided I wanted to transcribe everything everyone wrote. So I had something like 20 hours of material that I'm just transcribing. And I learned how to write dialogue from doing that, because you learn how people really speak. And no one speaks in straight declarative sentences. It's this weaving thing where they'll start and then they'll back away, and then they'll have an idea that they'll throw in, and it'll be a sentence fragment. And when you really pay attention to what real language looks like on a page, it's very, very different than what you think it looks like. And so just to even know what it looked like and to know how to recreate it was huge. And I recommend everybody do it. Just interview people about anything and transcribe it and look at how fucked the speech is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's
Well, it's what they say. It's what they don't say. It's where they trail off.
Right.
It's the logic they try to
Right.
pull together. I think those are incredible lessons. And speaking of lessons, I know there'll be people who will be listening to this and hear us throw around the term showrunner. And for a lot of people who aren't necessarily in the industry yet, there's not a ton of clarity on all that a showrunner does.
right.
So just for the sake of the conversation, could you break down your job for us?
Sure. The most annoyingly obvious place to start is you run the show, and meaning anything that keeps that show running smoothly is your responsibility. The real shorthand is to me the most accurate depiction of what we do. That's been on television or movies is Liz Lemon in 30 Rock. Like, that's almost exactly the job. You've got your writing staff, you're dealing with your actors, you've got production, you're racing all over the place. Like, that's a lot of what the job is. So it's probably also pretty similar to what a director would be in the feature world. So anything that is, any creative choice, every budget choice, every production choice, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. So like you're running that show. So today I was, rewriting a draft and emailing with an actor about questions about a scene and having a budget meeting about visual effects and giving answers on how I felt about a particular hero's makeup. And you're just one to the other with the absolutely no transition, where you'll be like writing about how does this person feel to lose a parent? And then the phone will pick up and someone's yelling at you about a budget. And then you have to be able to handle that and then hang up and then go back. And the compartmentalizing is a little insane.
And that's where doing 22 episodes a year,
right,
or season, not even a year. I think when you say year, you imagine 52 weeks, and we both know that it's not. So doing that, being a showrunner, you were the showrunner for 5 seasons, right?
Yeah. I mean, luckily I had a partner who, Bob Singer, who these titles don't actually mean anything to the audience, but he was like a legend. And Midnight Caller was his, and Presumed It. What was it? I'll think about it. But he has these like up. What?
It'll show up.
It'll show up. But Midnight Caller alone with Gary Cole is it's just an amazing show. And so he taught me, taught me that job. And I was really lucky to be paired with someone who I ended up loving and who wasn't that interested in like creatively overtaking it.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of closing in on his last lap, and I think he wanted to just golf and yell at people about the budget and direct. And he let me do a lot of the creative, which was amazing. So yeah.
So you had the real kind of training that we all wish that more writers could get today,
Yes.
which is writing and producing TV concurrently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, there are movies in between, but I don't want to stay away from The Boys for too long because that's why we're here. How do you pitch that show? What happened?
The Boys. Well, luckily, I mean, there is pre-existing material.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really brilliant comic by Garth Ennis. We took it out, me and the other producers. We took it out. The timing was good because Deadpool had just come out. So there was for the very first time a successful comp. There were earlier superhero parodies, but none of them ever worked. But Deadpool did. And so, part of our pitch was, because that's part of the thing, you're not just pitching the creative, which has to be strong, and the characters, which have to be strong. But like, there's a part of a pitch where you have to say to everyone, like, here's why this makes sense as you're pitching this to your bosses. And our attitude was like, look, someone's going to make the Deadpool show. So you can either be ahead of it, because we were developing this before it had come out. And so it had just come out, and we were pitching it like a couple weeks later. And we're like, everyone in town right now is working on their dark superhero satire. We have it and we're ready to go. And so if we don't do it, someone else will. So you should hire us to do it. And then we sold it to Cinemax. We didn't sell it to Amazon. I wrote that pilot for Cinemax. And then, because at the time they were like looking to get into more HBO kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And by the time I finished the script, like 8-9 months later, they had decided, no, we don't want to get into that HBO kind of stuff. But okay, here's a lesson. But one of the executives there was one of the guys from college, right? From film school. Mm-hmm. And so he said, my bosses want me to develop this as like a much cheaper thing, but like, I know you would murder me. So I talked them into putting it in a turnaround. And so, I mean, Scott Nemes has more to do with the success of this show than anyone, because like it went in a turnaround. Amazon was just starting their genre division. Mm-hmm. We were without a home for 3 days. Wow. And then Amazon just picked it right up. They were looking for completed material that could go. And and then they gave me a writer's room, and I started from there.
Were there any boundaries that you were given going into that first season? Were there things that just don't do this, but everything else is fine?
I have to give them credit. They've generally been really good at just letting us do whatever we want to do. I mean, look, first season of any show, you're being second guessed to death. And so there is a certain amount of, but it was like so weird. The things I'll say, it's so weird. The things that they took issue with, they had a real problem with the Deep launching a dolphin through the windshield. And then even more than that.
But sex with the dolphin was fine.
Well, no. That was the other. They were like, even if you're going to launch it to the windshield, do we have to imply that the dolphin wants Deep to give him a hand job? And I sent them, like 50 articles about how dolphins, because this is true, dolphins are the horniest motherfuckers on the planet. Like, they're so horny. Like, the minute you can communicate with a dolphin, and like that people have over the years, like the very first thing a dolphin says is like, please jerk me off. Like, they're crazy. And so I was like, look, it's just real. I was like, it's just, I'm writing with integrity here. But like, I really fought, like weirdly, I fought for it. And I said that's going to be a trailer moment. That's going to be a thing that everyone's going to talk about. There's so much content. You have to be noisy. This is noisy. And I think I threatened to quit over it. And so anyway, we kept it in, and sure enough, it was a big trailer moment. And I would say from second season on, and I mean, it really helps to have a show that works.
Yes.
Right? I mean, but once they saw that it was working, I think then we could get away with anything. An interesting PS to that is when we were in the middle of writing the first season, Me Too hit. And we had to actually adjust our storyline and adjust scripts that were written at the time, because in the pilot, there's a sexual assault, and Annie, the character who experienced it, we had a whole storyline about how she was just kind of like maneuvering behind the scenes to get her payback on Deep because she couldn't speak out about it. And then suddenly she could, and it changed everything we were doing in the back half of the season, where we had to like stop, regroup, and luckily I had a room of some very, very strong women and I just tried to get out of their way for that whole storyline. But it's like, okay, so now she can go public with it. And what does that mean? And how does that change what's going to happen to the character? And it's just interesting how the show has always been this kind of delicate dance with like what's happening in the world, and something will happen and we'll react because we work really hard to try to stay on top of things that are happening in society. And so you have to learn to really duck and move and be flexible quickly because society changes, like on election day, for example.
That it does.
Yeah.
When I watched it, I watched it with my husband, who would not allow me to watch it without him or to get ahead in it. To me, it always felt like a show where you, the storyteller, had very specific things to say, which I think is often lost when we just look at entertainment. How is it reacting to the world as it changes around you, and how all the things that we end up seeing, how much of them are the things that you ultimately wanted to say as a storyteller here?
I'm not psyched that the world seems to be reflecting the show more and more. Like, that's not my favorite thing. I would happily give up the avalanche of material that we get daily. I would happily give that up. So that's wild and unsettling. But in terms of like, I feel, look, I lucked into this. I got into it because I loved the comic. I loved the author. It's a political comic, but it's also it's a little bit more about just taking the piss out of superheroes. And I came in saying the superhero conglomerate industrial complex at that point had become so huge that someone was going to puncture it. And that was all I was interested in. Like, I'm like, well, just take the piss out of superheroes. That'll be cool and interesting and subversive. And it was very, very early on the process that me and the other people that were working on it were like, wait, these are actually like authoritarians that are fronting as celebrities. And there's a guy running for the White House right now who's carries a lot of this carries a lot of these features, and we're right there.
Yep.
Like, it's not just like, oh, let's react to that and think of a script and maybe in 4 years we'll put it out. Like, we're making this thing that almost by happenstance turned out to be, because then he got elected, and almost by happenstance turned out to be the perfect metaphor for the moment we were living in a way that I think you spend your whole life looking for. And we just stumbled into it, and we're making it, and it's going to be on the air, and in the middle of all of it. And so once we realized that we had that opportunity, we just wanted to just charge down that road, as far as we could and see where it took us. And and I think where it took us is really about what I want to say, which is you should have a healthy distrust of anyone who stands in front of you and says they're there to save you and they're the only ones who can. Anyone who is pitching simple answers to complicated problems. These are dangerous people and have been through history. And the real way that the world gets saved is by fucked up people doing a million boring, inconsequential, tiny things every day. And that's hard to dramatize, and that's hard for, that's not sticky in the way that you stand in front of everybody and say, I can bring back this and I can make America that. And I can, like that's very seductive, like my quarrel is not with the people who are desperate and scared and are just looking for an answer. It's the people who willingly and cynically know that they're bullshitting, but do it to amass power or money or ego or whatever the reason are. And they're dangerous. And it's not just Trump. It's the billionaire class. It's, people on both sides. I mean, I think there's a few more of them on the right side, but it's just, it's up to the regular person to question that. And I think the show tries to point that out.
Absolutely. I mean, I do appreciate how much you lean into it, because I think that it also provides a little relief for those of us living in this world, and being challenged by it and being able to look at it satirically, and laugh about it. But you also have innocence that you've brought into this world, right? That, for example, in this season, we had a very dramatic death scene and like a very emotional moments that feel very real in the face of satire. And I think that is actually the magic of the show, is that you can take us to very real emotional places.
Oh, thanks.
While also talking about fake news and propaganda and all of those things. Is there ever a place where you feel like this is a bridge too far, or is everything available?
Well, we the thing you're talking about in terms of like it having heart actually kind of answers the other question, which is from the beginning, I would always say to the other producers, I'm like, the most subversive thing this show could do is make you cry. So we should aim for that, and if you can give it heart and make people care about the characters. I mean, if you really boil down television to, if you really cook it in the pan down, it's the character business. Like, I'm in the character business. Movies, I'm in the plot or spectacle business. Television, there's a thing about laying in bed and watching someone in your bedroom or in your living room that you really care about. You're inviting these people into your house, and the more you care about them, the more your show will succeed. There's no simple formula, but you could almost boil down every single TV show to, if the characters work, that show is likely going to work. If the characters do not work, no matter what that show is, no matter how much money you throw at it, it is not going to work. And so, and I knew that, having done 22 episodes and the other things, like first and foremost is make people love these characters. They don't have to sympathize with them. They don't have to agree with them, but they have to love them.
Yeah.
And so that's where all the heart and the emotion and that was a part of it, was just a strategy, right? Like they'll go with me wherever I take them and we'll do these wild tonal swings, right? Like we'll go from like really raunchy, juvenile sex humor to political humor to
Psychotic
emotion
Sheep.
to Psychotic Sheep to a monster movie to horror. But the characters are consistent and people will follow them through this roller coaster because they love Huey. They even love Homelander in their own weird way, of what he's going to do next. And so to answer your question of like what's too far, we have to self-regulate that. And the general rule, I've broken it a couple times and usually have regretted it. But the general rule is, what is that, gonzo moment teaching me about the character or the world? Because if you do it just to do it, the show will start to feel cheap and exploitive, and people can smell that. You're like, oh, you're just trying to titillate or shock or be some edgelord. But if it is there to actually further that particular character's journey, or there's a metaphor to it. Like, it can never be just about the exploding penis, right? Like, there has to be something underneath it that you couldn't tell the story another way.
Yeah.
So that's usually the gauntlet I try to throw to the writers, and hopefully people can sort of sense that.
One of the things that I love that you do is that in season 1, we were much more black and white, right? There were the good guys, there were the bad guys. We fairly quickly got who's who, but specifically with Huey and where you take that character, and Butcher that seems more, well, is always idealistic, but is always willing to go as far as he needs to and really has no brakes on it. But I think it's really Huey's character that really is challenged from season to season. Is there any part of you that aches for those characters as they're confronted
Sure.
with those choices?
Yeah, no, my heart breaks for them. A filmmaker, a really great one, told me early in my career, he's at the height of his powers, but he said, look, create characters you love and then torture them. And that basically bears out. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I think they all go through a lot. And when the actors say to me, like, can I just have a scene where I'm happy? And my response is like, who the fuck wants to watch that? Like, who wants to, like, I went and got the mail and then we had cereal and it was delicious. And like, nobody it's about conflict, it's about consistently any given character having the craziest day of their life every single day. Otherwise, what are we doing? Right. So that's part of it. And yeah. And I mean, in terms of like the darkness and where some of the characters go, we're trying, sometimes I think with differing degrees of success, but we're not just trying to be subversive in terms of politics. We're trying to be subversive in terms of the actual format of an action and superhero movie or story, in that we're trying to make the point that like violence is really corrosive. And answering with your fist is actually a psychotic response. And so that's how Huey gets almost infected with this disease that poisons your soul. Like a movie it's kind of crazy when you think about how different it is, but we talk about the movie Unforgiven all the time, because Clint Eastwood made a Western that's about how the heroes in Westerns are fucking psycho. And it was brilliant,
Yeah.
And so we talk a lot about like subverting the genre by pointing out that, all the things that make heroes seem really sexy, vengeance, that kind of macho, like, one-liner thing, like that's all psychotic behavior. And we're trying to draw that out. And because Butcher is insane.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like I get why he's doing what he's doing, and I understand. But he is a hair away from being a villain. And he just is right on that line. And I think that's because he's just infected with violence.
As a writer, how much empathy do you have to have for your characters for them to be real and to be resonant and to be effective?
I mean, if you're a lot, and if you don't advocate for your characters, who will? Like eventually an actor will, and that's great, and they'll be focused on it. But you're the first person to live with these characters, and so you have to be able to love them and defend them. I don't know. literally, I don't know how to write a villain who's just like villainous. Like the thing I hate the most to write are characters that are crazy. Like they're just crazy. That's why they're doing crazy things. I'm like, it makes no sense to me. Like every monster in the world thinks they're a hero. They have very real reasons that they justify in their own head why they're doing the awful thing they're doing. They have a totally fucked worldview, but in their own little cocoon, they're like, God damn, I'm the hero and these other people are the villain. And I don't know how to write anything different, right? Because like one of the best parts for me of being a writer is you get to be like an armchair psychiatrist, and you get to say like, well, what makes someone want to do that? Why would they do that? What are they going for? What do they want? Want's a huge one. Like every single scene, you need to be able to define like what your character wants. And believe me, the actor's going to ask you, and you have to answer. But the single best way through any given scene, and sometimes he wants a sandwich, and sometimes he wants world domination, and sometimes he wants the girl. But like they always want something. They're never just like, oh, they're just there to answer questions. And that's a really, really important, corner I turned in learning how to be a writer. But like you just sort of have to, you have to understand them and why they do what they do. Otherwise, they don't have internal logic, and it's just kind of sloppy.
As you guys develop a character like Homelander in the room, is there a place where you feel like that is too far for that character? We can't take him all the way over there yet. He hasn't earned it yet. Or does it feel like Homelander is really the character that will go as far as you let him?
No, we actually are reasonably disciplined about how far we take him, because, you could really, and we're shooting season 5 right now. And when it's all out and said and done, like you'll be able to track all 5 years as like the slow mental breakdown of Homelander, and he just gets a little crazier every year. And we had to map that out. Or at least map out, okay, we took him this far in season 1, we have to take him this much further in season 2. And so the biggest danger for him that we find ourselves doing all the time and having to revise it is he will do something so crazy. I'm like, we need room to take him further, like later on in the season and next season. So he does have to kind of, he's becoming, it started with the North Star when we began was, all right, let's do the most realistic version of superheroes, in that if that superhero was just plopped into our world right now with all the real human psychology and real brain wiring, like what would they do? And so that's where you get to like, well, A-Train would be a professional athlete, and the Deep would be super insecure because his powers are stupid. But then you're like, but Homelander would be a sociopath. He's too powerful. He's too different than the others. He would just become increasingly disconnected from humanity and grow to be disgusted with his own humanity, but he's of course inherently human. Like he can never escape the thing he hates most about himself and others, and that's driving him slowly insane. And so, so you have to grow, anyway, you have to grow that, where it's like this season he decides he doesn't need love anymore, and so he works to try to shut that off. And then this season he decides he doesn't want anyone's approval and is just going to do whatever, I can do whatever the fuck I want. That line that keeps coming up over and over again. That came from this season. He learns that he doesn't have to keep his mask on. And so you come up with these like through lines that keep building till you get to season 5, which is so fun because you don't have to do a season 6. And so you can finally like take him to his, final Pokemon evolution.
Now, as you get to season 5, do you feel like the things that you designed originally, looking at the original material and then talking about the show, do you feel like it's ultimately panning out as the way that you had seen it all the way back in season 1, or have some things changed and surprised you?
I will say this, that any showrunner who tells you they have a plan and they've been executing it to plan is fucking lying. Like 100%. I know a lot of showrunners. I knew the Lost guys. They're lying. You know about a season and a half at a time. Like during season 1, I could tell you all about where season 1 was going to end, and I knew the first couple in season 2. Season 2, right? So, and you have like a sketch, like, and it's all obvious. It's, I wouldn't be shocking anyone to say that The Boys is about like the slow train crash between Butcher and Homelander. Right. And so it's just each season you bring them a little closer until finally they're going to crash. So things like that, that Homelander's going to go completely, whatever his furthest, step in a sociopathy. But beyond that, you figure out, we spend about 6 weeks, a month to 6 weeks at the top of every season just talking through what we want that season's storyline to be. So we really do get into incredible detail. Like I could tell you every beat of season 5 now, but I needed that 4 to 6 weeks with a really smart group of writers that are smarter than me who can, that we can figure that out. And we do that at the beginning of every season. Where do the twists go? What are the tentpole moments? What's the climax going to be? And all that's figured out at the beginning. But of that season, you're not doing that, 3-4 seasons in advance. One human brain isn't smart enough to do that, honestly, really. And you need a room, and it takes. Just the fact that it takes 6 weeks to figure out 8 episodes tells you why no one is doing like 5-6 years of it at a time. That you'd spend an entire year just doing nothing but writing mythology and not writing scripts, which is impractical.
That I understand. Now, you spoke about it earlier as a collaborative sport and now kind of leaned into the room, breaking the season. Being that we're recording this for writers, I would love to hear more about what are the kind of North Stars, what are the reference points like Unforgiven, how you come at a season, who are the writers that you look to bring in, and how do you go into breaking the season and then breaking episodes?
We start kind of like I said, which is, you start with just very general, I like to start, I always say, like, you start from like the 10,000 mile orbit and you just slowly work your way down. Like, what are the themes that we're interested in? Like, what do we want to say? It sounds a little like pompous and douchey, but like every single thing you write, there's something you want to say. It's a form of communication. So if there's nothing you want to say, or if what you want to say is like lasers are cool, then you should stop to think about like, what is the reason you're putting all this blood, sweat, and tears into a thing? It could be about, I want the world to know about my parents. But there should be a reason. So we start there, and like, what's everyone's reason? What are we all scared of? What are we all angry about? It's fun. It's like group therapy, right? And then it starts to, from all that dust, you start to grab onto jokes and ideas, and it all just starts to kind of form together in a fairly organic way. The one thing I would say is, like, once you're in the actual breaking of episodes, where it's like, okay, it's episode 2, we know that we still don't know much, but we know that we want these 2 or 3 turns to happen, but we don't know how we're going to get there. The thing I would suggest, and not a lot of I think it's how I learned. It's how Bob Singer taught me. And it's not super common, which kind of blows me away, which is you break character first. Like plot comes way, way later. And so we'll start every break with, I mean, we have a lot of fucking characters, but like you'll lay out each character and you'll say, where do we want them to start? Where did they start based on where the last episode ended? Where do we want them to go? How do they arc? You know, what 3 or 4 emotional beats do they need to hit to get from A to B? You know, so they can go from angry to loving. Then the next episode, they can go from loving to heartbroken, you know, but there's always a journey and there's always a couple steps. And like plot is a dime a dozen. Plot is honestly pretty easy. You know, it's fun, you know, and sometimes it can be frustrating, but like plot's the fun part, you know, action and fighting and running and, you know, the MacGuffin and what are the stakes and, you know, all that's really basic shit. But I always say to my writers when they're pitching story, I'm like, maybe. I'm like, but I don't know until I know, is this helping me move the character forward? And a lot of times the best way to come up with plot, for me anyway, is you say, oh, in this beat, I need him to like really realize that his love is futile. And so you say, okay, well, what's a plot point and what's a plot move and what's a scene that helps me do that? So now you have like a North Star, you have a guide of, you're not just pitching wild on what these scenes can be. You can say, oh, it has to be the scene that convinces him of this, or makes him explode, or makes him desperate, you know? And so you start to really zero in on like the energy that plot point has to have. Which I think is super helpful. And then again, I think movies are a totally different muscle, yes, for sure. But like I said, it's the character business, and letting your characters drive it is really important. And you'll even get to the point, it's so douchey to say, but you'll even get to the point where you get to know them well enough that like, if you quiet down and listen, like they'll tell you where they want to go. It's so annoying to say that, but it is. But like someone will pitch something and I'll be like, they wouldn't do that. And they'd be like, yeah, you're right. They wouldn't. Because you get to know them well enough to know whether they'd go right or left. And that's really helpful too, because anything you can do to avoid the tyranny of that blank page, mm-hmm, you know, so it's like, I have a thematic. And so I know that that's a signpost for me, or the character stuff is a signpost, or, you know, but you're always looking for like, what's the thing that can point you in the right direction?
Absolutely. Now, does your cast ever come back and say, you guys took it this way and I don't buy this for my character. This is not the right direction.
Oh yeah.
What happens?
Another thing that I think writer producers don't do enough. There's this like cliche, and there's like a little bit of truth to it, which I think is unfortunate, of like rolling their eyes at the actor. Like, oh, the actor wants to know his motivation. You know, all that shit. It's so valuable. It's so fucking valuable. Like through that heat and discussion and conflict and respectful arguing and debating, it gets so much better. And it blows me away that people like, how dare they, you know, question the thing that I wrote. Like, you know, look, we have different, between an actor of any given character and me, like we have different jobs. My job is to know the chessboard. It's their job to know their piece. Mm-hmm. So, and all they do all day is stare at every little facet of that little piece for months. And I'm looking at every piece. So they are going to catch shit that I am not seeing. So they're going to say, look, but you had me say this line 4 episodes ago, and now you're having me do this, and I'm just trying to create a consistent, and that's super valuable because I'm not paying that as close as attention I'm paying to every word. I'm not paying attention to every single syllable that comes out of that particular character's mouth. And conversely, they'll say, well, but I don't know if I would go left. I'm like, well, you have to go left because I'm 2 chess moves ahead here. And this guy's going to go here, and then you're going to have to go right. And they go, oh, okay, I get it. Oh, I see the bigger picture. So it's in that, it's in that discussion of really 2 different ways to look at the same story that I think the magic actually really happens. And, look, you have to hire good actors and hopefully good people who can be respectful, and you can have a respectful exchange of ideas. But it should in no way be a one-way street. And it's to the detriment of the project when producers have that. They're just way too up their own ass. I worked with a director, David Nutter, who is like a legendary television pilot director. He's the winningest pilot director in television history. He's made more pilots than anyone else who ever has. And I was writing my very first pilot. It was for Tarzan. And he was directing it, and it was my very first thing that was getting produced, and I'm with him on set. And an actor is saying, hey, do you mind if I do this and do this? And he said something, and at the time, I did not react well because I was young, but I really have grown to love it, which is, he's like, it's not about the words. And I'm like, how dare, what do you mean it's not about the words? But it's not. What he's saying is it's about the emotion. Mm-hmm. And whatever that actor needs to tap into the correct emotion for that scene, sometimes they'll go off and they'll say, well, I think I should feel like this. I'm like, well, no, I need you to emotionally be here. But if they say a or and that helps them get to the emotional heart of what that scene is, then who the fuck cares? Like, who's sitting there? Well, you didn't say the at the proper blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not about that. It's a messier process that's supposed to have like blood and passion and people, So I'm not a big, as long as you maintain the intent of the dialogue. And like I always say to him, I'm like, just give it to me once as scripted. And not even like 100% as scripted. Give it to me once, like 90% as scripted. And then just go. And you end up consistently with better material than had you, done it yourself. You're only as good, if you only rely on yourself, you're only as good as what you can imagine. Versus you get to use dozens and dozens of people's imagination and then take credit for it. That's what's so crazy. Like, you get the credit for it. Like, why are you like, I'm not taking your idea? Like, dude, it's your fucking name on it. Like, you get to reap the benefit of all of it. So it's just insane to me that people don't do it.
Wise words. Now, you talked about being in the character business. You are shooting season 5. Talked about these characters having become living, breathing entities for you. So I'm going to ask you a cheesy question, but I mean it sincerely. Mm-hmm. Once you're done shooting the season, the show has wrapped, who is the character that you're going to miss the most?
The Deep. The Deep is endlessly fun to write. He's the only character that we've never once struggled coming up with a story for. Like, he's just always a delight. You're just like, he has a love affair with an octopus. We're gonna do the joke of that season was like, we wanted to do a marriage story. We'd all just seen a marriage story. Like we and we're like, we want to do a marriage story with an octopus. Like, the most serious, like, take that relationship as serious as we possibly can and have them really fight and have it be raw and like, but have it be with an octopus. And he's just really entertaining. Every other character, I'm gonna miss them all, and I'm in a certain amount of denial because I'm in the madness of production right
Of course.
now, and so all I'm thinking about is survival. But when I get like close and you really actually finally have to let go of all of the characters, it's gonna be really hard, really hard.
What are you, not that it's over yet or that, you know, you're 100 and looking back, but being it that we're coming towards the end of this particular show that has been so seminal and, you know, first and foremost.
It's been so seminal, you guys.
It really has.
Okay, thanks.
I will say that it's not just the show. I would say it's also the approach of the marketing and how you got it out there. And it's a show that had something to say in a time where we need people to say things and say smart things, whether we agree with them or not. What are you the proudest of with this show?
Oh, wow. The team. When you're starting, I mean, we've all been in this. The thing that's like a miracle to me about this show, and really, I mean, a lot of shows, is it starts with like you in a room alone and there's nobody. And then slowly but surely people start coming in and saying like, oh yeah, that means something to me too. And I'm going to pick up that torch and I'm going to carry it. And I'm passionate about the thing that you were in a room alone, right? And then the actors come in and then they get passionate, and the production designers and the DPs and the editors and the visual effects guys, and then the marketing people and the studio people.
And the composer from USC.
And it's like, and it's so, and they're smart and they're giving everything they have. You know, this is one of those shows where it's like, it's never just a job for the people who work on it. Like, we all really genuinely love it. And so we're all pouring all of our passion into it. Like, I hug the focus pullers when I'm on set. Like, I've never had that experience before. And there's just something so humbling about all of those people making this thing their own. Because I remember when it was just me. And that's like a really beautiful, humbling, you just sort of can't believe that you're that lucky that you're able to make a thing that this many people, give their lives to. So that to me is the thing I'll miss the most proud of.
I think that is a brilliant thing to share. And a great note for us to wrap up on, because
Great.
I think you shared a ton of really great stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It was fun. Thanks, everybody.